Welcome to Act Out. I'm Eleanor Goldfield, and this is your tipping point. It's been a full year of Act Out episodes, and it would be a shame to shift into a new year without a look back. Not just because we're proud of the work that we've done, but because the powerful activists, artists, and movements that we've hosted are and will be an inspiration moving into next year. A raised fist in the face of fascism, a fuck you to the powers that be, saying we, the people, aren't going to be passive. A massive display of what we are capable of, the creative ideas, the connections made, the actions we take, all of this in the name of justice, peace, truth, and people and planet over profit. So without further ado, here's a look back for the fight ahead. I'd need less money if I had some more. I'm leaning on reason, but knocking on the door of nonsense. Dollars and cents, change, the kind that jingles, not the one that stains, the pages of life, the lines of our fate. Do you believe in that sort of thing? I don't. Or I won't. Pick one, or one will be chosen for you. Walk, crawl, but keep moving. The path is just where your feet go. Where does your mind, your soul you rode in on, go? The persistent resistance to life in the name of blinders, a job, a mortgage, a cage. What then remains at the end of the day? You pick at the scab, but you're corporately maimed. The hours you save to keep for yourself are bathed in thick, juicy marinades, and as your mind hungers for depth, you shove shallow glitter to mitigate plagues of the soul, blistering, hoping for home, a place where the space between you and yourself isn't built up with likes, to-do lists, and spikes of a fever that fills your days with this haze, this vacant malaise. That repeats on repeat, the socially clean, think less and work more capitalist scheme that you are what you have and you must strive to be more in order to thrive. This life could be yours for a miserly fee. Believe me, people would die just to live. The Instagram lie, and they do. How much of our essence is filled with the presence of digital code, our 1-0 home, the only place left that we roam, an open-air prison of matrix precision. How fucked are our lives when we unplug and rise just to find that we don't like the world outside. So we burrow back in, heads in the sand, eyes on the landing page. We're coming in, guiding our minds to sites that remind us that everything is just fine. Breathe a sigh of relief, count this change to believe, and indeed in this system the only thing making our rise is belief that we can and yes always will find a new high. But here in the lows of the dope that we chose, the matrix is glitching, the boat that we're all in is pitching, and we happily sold the oars to a guy who said water won't rise and today it's been cold. Can you piece bits of gold to make a lifeboat? Can you fold up these dollars to save all our souls? Sorry, but no. The answer, my friends, was blowing in the wind. The hurricanes, typhoons, the crazy shit loomed, and we never stopped to think, just to think. That soon all we built, all the progress we wrote on the backs of the weaker to climb that much steeper, the slope doesn't go on forever. And the way down is much quicker and less fun. A suicide leap that now seems to creep along with ignorable calm. So we focus on alms for the rich and the mighty, kick down and build up, pray to the golden gods and thank Midas for the wisdom to always behold, the glittering hope that all we do touch will someday turn to gold. Carving in stone at the end of our rope, we etch out a future that could have been penciled in. And now we stand fenced in, a fate that we don't know enough to await. I'd need less money if I had some more, but all I have is some sense, and that's not enough to buy change. So imagine an elementary school that's only a couple of 100 meters away from a pit, emitting radiation that's 4 times as high as levels found in long-term evacuation zones directly outside of Fukushima. Now imagine that in South Dakota. The pit that I'm talking about is an open-pit uranium mine, and it is in fact 200 meters away from an elementary school, and it is in fact emitting 1,770 microrems per hour, which again is in fact 4 times more than many red and orange evac zones around Fukushima. And yes, sorry to say, but there are about 169 uranium mines less than 40 miles away from Mount Rushmore in the Black Hills. Here's the gist. Back in the heyday of nuclear exploration, both in terms of energy and bombs, the government not only went on its own uranium digs, but urged private companies and even regular citizens to do so as well. And made movies about it, apparently. They literally said, dig up some uranium and bring it. We'll pay you for it. So, between private people, businesses, and the government, there are now more than 15,000 abandoned uranium mines in the 15 western states. The exact number is a bit difficult to tell because, again, some are just like in people's backyards or in random spots around otherwise seemingly spotless landscapes. And therein lies another problem. Much like methane, which we've discussed before, radioactive dust is odorless. You can't see it. You can't point to a gust of wind and on the plains and say, ooh, radioactive. You can't look at a glass of water and say, looks like radiation seeped into my water supply. But after whole communities experienced severe health issues, livestock and farming catastrophes, people began to investigate, and they started fighting. This is why Clean Up the Mines and Defenders of the Black Hills are pushing for public awareness, outrage, and the Uranium Exploration and Mining Accountability Act of 2016. This act would establish a complete inventory of all existing abandoned uranium mining and exploratory sites. It would also authorize the EPA to develop action plans for site-specific reclamation of abandoned uranium mines and exploratory sites, temporary closure or immediate remediation of operating uranium mines within the same watershed, institute a program of public education on dangers of abandoned uranium mines, and finally, mandate accountability, enforcement, and public oversight to ensure cleanup of abandoned uranium mines. The scope of this issue is unbelievable. Consider the population of New York City, 8.4 million people. An estimated 10 million people live within 50 miles of a recorded mine, and that's a recorded mine. And as I said, in the age of dig, ship, and burn fossil fuels contaminated water supplies in the farming and meat industries also nestled in those areas, this is not a localized issue. If you ever wanted to fight against the invisible hand of corrupt and evil industry, this is definitely your fight. For more information on the Uranium Act, further facts and backstory, as well as other ways to get involved, visit cleanupthemines.org and defendblackhills.org.
Most of what we do is really practical stuff. So we want nothing that requires new legislation and nothing that requires rulemaking even, because now to put my academic hat on, the one thing that's most distinctive about the Reagan and Bush appointee judges is not how they rule on discrimination cases, it's how they rule on business cases. They are staggeringly pro-business in these things. And so you can see that they're trying to destroy all effective rulemaking by saying you haven't done enough cost-benefit analysis the way we, the conservative pro-business judges, want that cost-benefit analysis to be done, which, surprise, always is in favor of business. And by the way, they never require cost-benefit analysis when you deregulate. Only when you try to protect the public do they require it, right? Most of what we do is oriented towards reestablishing a rule of law on Wall Street, where the rule of law has been destroyed for the elite bankers. But another big chunk is, you really need to get rid of these systemically dangerous banks, which, by the way, they won't even use honesty. They call them systemically important, like they deserve a gold star. But the real definition is, and I'm quite serious about this, you can even find this, for example, on the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis's website, and they're ultra-conservative, is these are banks that when, not if, when the next one blows up, it will cause a global financial crisis. And there are ballpark 25 of these in the United States, and outside the United States, there are another 30 to 35, right? So we are rolling the dice just in the United States roughly 25 times a day, and elsewhere about 35 times a day, as to which one will first fail next and cause a global crisis. And it'll probably take others down as well, or require tens of trillions of dollars of bailouts again. Either of them very bad things. So we want to get rid of those. We think it's absolutely critical. You can use the existing authority that we've had as regulators for over 25 years, to to set what are called individual minimum capital requirements. And that's a lot of jargon, but what it simply means is we are supposed to look not generally at banks, but at the specifics of the banks and say, you endanger the entire economy. Your capital requirement is not 10%, it's 70%. And if you do that, they will shrink to the size where they no longer pose a global systemic risk, and that is good for everyone. Second thing, in terms of time, I'll limit it to is Glass-Steagall, right? So there's a lot of phony stuff out there about Glass-Steagall that it had nothing to do with the crisis. Simply not true, but also irrelevant because you don't just prepare to fight the last war, right? You get ready for the things that can cause crises. And among the things are investment banking, which is precisely what by destroying Glass-Steagall, we've now allow federal deposit insurance, which is to say us, we stand behind this, to ensure investment banking where you have an ownership position.
You talked about, reinstalling the rule of law on Wall Street, and I think this is a question that comes up with a lot of usually naysayers who say, "Why bother?" Is the question of, okay, you get this one thing done, you past this one hurdle, but then how do you ensure that that's enforced in the future?
Right. So this is exactly what needs to be asked. And so the first answer is I've used a few myself in this talk, but we overwhelmingly reject any military metaphors. You can't win a decisive battle against corruption and elite, fraud, and political influence. You can try to structure things so that it's easier to fight these things. And that's, again, our stuff is very practical in trying to change these structures, try to institutionalize more a culture that's going to object. But yeah, in the end, I can put a leader in charge of the Justice Department who's going to prevent prosecutions. So in the end, the only any kind of assurance is us, the people, calling these folks to account. As I said, it used to happen in part because we made public the number of criminal referrals. And so people could see, by the way, we made over 30,000 criminal referrals in the savings and loan debacle, which is 1/160th the size in losses of this crisis. In the current crisis, they made 0 criminal referrals. They even eliminated the function of the criminal referral coordinators, which, by the way, is one of the practical steps that we have in our plan to reestablish this. Nothing wins forever, but that's life. You know, life is a really big struggle, and we have to wage it.
The first time I did it was in 2011 in Tijuana, which was the border that I actually had to cross when I was moving to the States when I was 10 years old. Um, and at the time, there were so many stories of people being deported, people that have existed and lived in the States for over 20 years, and families being divided, and all these structures that, were being held in place all of a sudden became ruptured. And I think, sadly to say, during Barack Obama's presidency, it's the most amount of deportations ever in history. And so there's a huge amount of frustration and anger that you feel around that area. It's not just only people risking their lives to cross the border, but it's like people that already belonged here in the States being sent back. And I think it was this frustration that led me to want to do this intervention in 2011, which was to just create an illusion of what if there was a morsel that was missing? What if there was a hole in the wall? And using kind of what I have as a weapon, which is paint. I'm an artist and I'm a painter, and so I thought I could use that as a way of expressing my ideology of what I want to see in place.
It's already a long story, but doesn't it feel as though it's just begun? The patterns that time has spun, repetitions made by follies of those seeking their fame, clutching to fortune, hoping to be saved, hoping to trade these hours and days for a promise of life, like the one that they gave. Irony clings to these spoils of life, the glimmers of logic struggle to light, the caves where our brains dig their own premature graves, accepting a fate on which they signed their name. Through silence, the violence, complicity, quiet, in line with the bias, a head-down reliance on God, war, and lying. We've been here before, God and war, this path too well traveled, dodging the corpses of those who believed or couldn't find means to leave and be free. A bend in the road, a few more, you're home, back where you started. A spiral disheartened, each lap is another sick layer of hate mixed with fear, the potent elixir that never runs dry. Sicker we die, a few voices cry, pushing to steer humanity's course far away from here. A jagged line juts out. From the circle of time, peace flickers, that logic glimmers, but clouds of the dutiful dying, the ones who find living a crime, then dig their murderous rage into children, the weak, the mentally caged, pouring the same poison we've tasted before. God and war. God and war. The jagged line smooths to the circle once more. God and war, God and war. Around the bend, making amends for evil that's past with a new sanctioned blast, righting our wrongs through the prongs of our lords. God and war, God and war. The stadium filled with mourners and fans, the brainwashed who know that this is our path, that outside this loop is lunacy, fools who dare to suggest our record be moved, that we could improve by trading some death for a life, a certain repetitive strife for something different. Better? Who knows? This loop is our coup, all that we know. The evolution of we has never been free to stray from the creed of God and war, God and war. The games still be played, but you know how they end, 'cause they never do. Here, death is the prize, a life on your knees, rise now to die. So then, why not try life outside? I cannot promise paradise, but riding on rings of a hellish repeat, this word simply uttered that sounds thrilling, sweet, different. Different from where we've all been before. God and war, God and war. We're rounding a bend, the past is now past, but the future could cast a different shadow than grave circles darkened by logicless caves, humanity's chance to actually save itself from the gods and the war it once looked to save.
Dakota Access has got their permits from the four states that it crosses through, but they're still hung up on the federal water crossing permits that are issued by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers under Section 404 of the Clean Water Act. They need permission to drill underneath the Missouri River, which is where our camp is at. They plan on boring down 90 feet underneath the river and coming up on the other side. They say that this project has avoided all federal and native land, but they've completely ignored the fact that Standing Rock's water is impacted. It's just right downstream of the Missouri River, as well as most of the rural water systems for South Dakota and all the other reservations.
Hi, my name is Wiaka Eagleman. I'm from Rosewood Sioux Tribe. Camp for the Sacred Stone started on April 1st. It's been there constantly, people coming and going. We are currently training in nonviolent direct action. We are having teachings going on about our culture and our treaties. Just know everybody's welcome to come and support.
Hello, I'm Nikia American Horse. I'm from Campbell, North Dakota, located on Standing Rock Sioux Tribe. We are opposing the Dakota Access Pipeline, not only because of the negative impact it's going to have on our reservations, but also the impact it's going to have on all who live and thrive and get water from the Missouri River.
We have to understand that crime is brought about by poverty. The strongest and only effective crime fighter there is fighting poverty.
I'm just curious, how did you before we wrap up, how did you go from being a brutal cop to where you are now?
Well, I went from a brutal cop, and I was brutal. In fact, if we had body cameras then, I would have lost my job. After the first time, I thought, wow, man, what happened to me then? Geez, I really lost it. I can't let that happen again. About a week later, I do the same thing. I use too much force on a guy. I say, geez, Ray, come on, get a hold of yourself, man. You cannot be doing that. It's just not right. I mean, make the arrest, but once he's arrested, it's done. Third time, I realized that. I realized I need help. So I arranged a meeting with a counselor. You know, you do this, you don't have to go through a supervisor. I did it on my own. You can do that. So I go in the building, and he's got a big table. He's sitting on that side, I'm sitting on this side, and start talking. And about 15 minutes into the session, he gets up, walks behind his desk, open the blinds to look out into the parking lot. And then he comes back, he sits down, and he goes, excuse me, but today I just bought a brand new red Corvette, and I wanted to make sure nobody was messing with it out there in the parking lot. And I thought, yeah, that's a little, I didn't say anything, but I thought, I don't like that. This is a therapy session. But anyway, it was a 45-minute session. That was 15 minutes in. A half an hour in, another 15 minutes, he does the same thing. When he comes back to sit down, I say, red Corvette, right? And he goes, and I just left.
Yeah.
So that was the type of counseling available to cops. So what I said, okay, I still need help. And I read about this self-visualization. Self-visualization is it's sort of like a meditation, and you visualize yourself in these very hostile confrontations. And you visualize how you want to handle them. You visualize somebody screaming and spitting at you. You visualize how you say, whoa, you're under arrest now, assault on police, spitting on a police officer. You don't immediately start pummeling them. And so you put yourself through all these scenarios in your mind, and the subconscious mind is very powerful. So many of our actions and behavior is controlled by the subconscious mind. So the other thing I did, I had 3x5 cards, and I put them in different locations. Every tour of duty, when I opened up my locker room, I had a 3x5 card, big black magic marker. Ray, you are the professional. Meaning the burden of acting properly is on me. I'm being paid to be a professional. It's not his responsibility to act professional, but it is mine. Ray, you are the professional.
The fault is our system, is the fact that we have a market-based system for healthcare in the United States, where we treat healthcare as a commodity and not as a public good. And we're an outlier because of that. Most other civilized countries do not treat healthcare that way. So really, in a market system, the incentive is charge as much as you can. So it's really the fact that we just don't have a system that allows there to be any kind of rational pricing. For decades now, because I've been looking into this, we've tried to tweak the current system, and every single time we've done it, it has failed. We continue in the same path. And so the lowest incremental step that we can take right now is to just immediately expand, a national, traditional, publicly financed Medicare to every single person. That gives us the ability to simplify the administration, which gives us the cost savings so that we can provide comprehensive benefits. It allows us to negotiate for fair prices for services and pharmaceuticals, and it also allows us to give hospitals operating budgets so that they're not having to micromanage everything, and they can just focus on taking care of patients that walk in the door, so that there's much more clinical interaction.
We humans have an incredible ability to adapt to a lot of situations. The aforementioned GMOs are a good example. How did we go from eating and expecting to eat real food to accepting this? Because it seems more convenient, and because we have learned to not only adapt to our surroundings, but adapt our surroundings to fit us. And while it may seem that we twist and contort nature more than we do ourselves, it's not just that we have found a way to adapt our world to fit in with our quote-unquote progressing paradigms. It's that we accept these conveniences. We accept these shortcuts to thinking and feeling, the shallow end versus the deep end, because we too are just as adaptable as our surroundings. Unions are no longer a thing? Okay, I can adapt to that. Maternity leave isn't a thing? Okay, I'll adapt to that too. Fresh air isn't a thing? Okay, I'll just breathe through a filtered gas mask. No big deal. Adaptability can and has been a tremendous plus for humanity. It's allowed us to survive extreme conditions, food shortages, physical and mental pain. However, it's also allowed us to accept the many causes of these trials: war, inequality, climate change, dictatorial and oppressive regimes. We realize that we can get by, periodically complaining to a bartender or your hairdresser about how much your medical bill was, laughing it off, and then just carrying on. In this case, adaptability is dangerous. The frog in the slowly warming pot of water may be adaptable, but I doubt it would share your appreciation of its pliancy once you're serving frog legs for dinner. In other words, adaptability has helped us survive, but can also help us die. In a sick, dystopian 1984 Kevorkian kind of way, our adaptability is keeping us dumb, poor, malnourished, unequal, and disposable. We can get to the point where a smog-filled sky is normal, where a tomato may or may not cause internal bleeding, and where politicians proudly sport corporate donors on their $3,000 blazers. But does that mean that we should get there? Is that really the pride of our evolutionary prowess? I'd like to think not. I'd like to think that we can also adapt into using that other gift of evolution, our fucking brains. And through that, separate positive adaptability from negative adaptability. To know when to be like, oh yeah, cool, I could definitely use a glass bottle as opposed to plastic. And when to say, yeah, you know what, fuck you, and fuck that. Our system of endless growth is impossible, and only presently plausible because we adapt to its conniving stupidity. Stop adapting. Think before you adapt. Adapt along the lines of logic, justice, and peace. Fight the rest. And with that, we'll wrap up this year's many doses of dissent. Thank you so much for watching and for sharing these shows with friends, foes, and people you don't know. We'll be back in the new year on January 11th, and until then, good night and act out. And real quick, to keep independent, non-corporatized media like this show going, donate at Occupy.com/donate. If you'd like to donate directly to Act Out, visit Patreon.com/actout.